No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, hope everything's going all right in your gardens this week. I'm just out here in the alleyway and just noticed this tomatillo plant that's, look, it's just growing right out of the gravel here, and even produced a little fruit here, although the fruit inside seems to be kind of small, but that makes sense. It's just a small little plant growing out of the alleyway, and just kind of shows us how resilient and determined nature really is. Maybe that's just a little something to think about this week. All right, everybody, let's get growing.
All right, all of my favorite garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people, welcome to the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch, I'm your host today, and we've got a really great show ahead for you today. Been really looking forward to this conversation a little bit later on in the show. We're going to be talking with author and garden inspirationalist Marcus Bridgewater from the Garden Marcus channel. And looking forward to that conversation here coming up in just a little bit. And also in just a few minutes too, we're going to be joined by our friend Joe Kozlowski from Garden State Gardener is going to join with us here. And yeah, Joe's been out of the game just a little while and he's been back in. So I just wanted to catch up with Joe here on the show this week. And he was kind enough to give us his time today. So hopefully here in just a little bit, we'll start that conversation with Joe. And again, I hope all of you are having a great gardening week. And thank you so much for joining with us today. And remember, we are here every Saturday and Sunday. Let's see, is it going to work here? There we go. Every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, really great to have all of you here joining with us today. And if you are here with us, definitely hit that like button right here at the top of the show. Click the thumbs up and as well, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, which I can't believe you haven't already. I mean, we've got so many great things growing on here at Let's Get Growing. You'll definitely want to make sure you're clicking that subscribe button as well as the bell notification so you can be notified of all of our upcoming live streams and videos and all of that here. And definitely, if you can, share with your friends, get online, go to your other social media, all of that, click a link, put a link, let people know about this great show, Let's Get Growing here, that we have every weekend. We've got a great show, a great community here on the Urban Gardener channel. So definitely share around with all of your friends and let them know about what we've got growing on here. And also at the top of the show, we always love to give a big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on our replay. So great to have you all here with us here joining when you can. It's great to have you here live. It's great to have everybody who's joining with us live, but I know most people just don't have the time sometimes to come and join on the weekends. So it's always awesome to have you join with us on the replay. And if you are watching the replay, get down in the description or into the comments below, leave a comment, leave a question, or just drop by and say hi. I always love hearing from all of you, whether it's in our chat here live or if you're just leaving us a great comment or question or anything, right down in our comment section of the replay video. So thank you all so much again for being a part of our show here. It's so great. The urban gardener community, the gardening community in general, is exactly why we're here and why I show up every single weekend to put on this show for all of you, is because we have such a great gardening and growing community. And again, it's just so great to have all of you with us. And if you do have any questions or comments or anything like that, definitely participate if you're here live in our chat feature. And if you do have any questions, put them in all caps. That way I can see your questions from the rest of the conversation. We can try to make sure that we get those asked here on the show, especially when we got our guests here. I love it when you guys drop in questions and all of that. And again, we might not be able to get to all of them, but we'll definitely try to get as many as we can in. So definitely thank you so much for participating in helping us out with the interviews and dropping in all of your favorite questions. Excellent, excellent. And also, too, remember, we do have some links down below for all of our guests. Make sure that you jump in and check out those links and go check out our guests and their channels and their social media and those sort of things as well, too, to help spread the love. That's what we're here for, is growing community through gardening, and help us out by growing our community, and those who also participate and take their time to join with us each and every weekend here on the show. And I love it if you go to one of our guests' links down below in our description, and then go visit their page, subscribe, follow, do all that sort of stuff. But even better yet, go to one of their posts or one of their recent videos or something like that. Drop in there and just leave a comment real quick and say, hey, I saw you over on the Urban Gardener channel on the Let's Get Growing show, and let them know that their time is well served here, as we are, like I said, growing our community through gardening. So definitely follow all those those links down below to our guests and everything. So again, really great to have all of you here with us today. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to come and join with us last week. Last Saturday, we didn't really have a Saturday guests. It was a real short show, and we just kind of hung out with each other and everything. But on our Sunday edition of the show, we had a just amazing time on the Sunday edition of the show. We had a couple of our favorite guests that we've had here on the show. Every guest is one of my favorites. There's a nice little bit of information too. But these guys were really great to come together to do one of our gardening roundtables, and we got to hang out and have a fun discussion with Mark Valencia from Self-Sufficient Me and Nate Mary from Garden Like a Viking. This was just such an awesome get together with these guys. I was really great. Glad to be able to pair them together for a really fun discussion. And yeah, you'll want to go back and check that out as well too. We talked about all sorts of things. And another fun thing about doing the gardening roundtables is not just me putting on it or having an interview or discussing or conversating with our guests and all of that. The garden roundtables are a little bit more fun because we get to have a couple of other people here, and they can talk with each other. We can kind of go back and forth, and we can all kind of discuss different things and all of that too. So it's not just a one-on-one interview. It's a really fun kind of discussion for all of us to participate in. And last week's was just as great as we've ever had, as far as a discussion with both Mark from Self-Sufficient Me and Nate Murray from Garden Like a Viking. These guys have some really great channels. Nate I've followed ever since just before the year before we got started with the show. Nate had got started with his channel, so he's kind of newer in the game of gardening and the gardening community, but man, he's got a great channel, he's got a great following, and all of that. So having him here on the show as a guest and then a part of our roundtable is just really awesome. He's very supportive of what we do and everything. And then Mark is just amazing too. I've followed Mark since I first got into gardening about 13-14 years ago. Many years ago, as I was getting into gardening, I went to YouTube to start learning about gardening from different people. And then there was this guy from Australia, had this fun orchard. He had a real fun personality and all of that. And and it wasn't even really relevant, his content, to what I was doing here in Southern Oregon or anything. And this is one of the things I found great, in discovering Mark's channel and everything, was that even though that we don't have necessarily the same climates, the same sort of things going on in our garden, there's a lot of things that pertain to gardening that we can share with each other no matter where we live. And so that was really great to be able to catch Mark's channel and find him And again, it was really early on for him. He didn't have but as many subscribers as we do here on the Urban Gardener channel. You know, he had a pretty small channel, and had just a really fun content. He just really brought some great energy to gardening and growing and everything. So I made sure I followed along with him and everything throughout all the years, and it's just been wonderful to watch someone like him and his channel grow the way it has. I think he's somewhere around 2.5 million subscribers for his channel. You know, he's got a lot of great things going on there at Self-Sufficient Me, and it was just really wonderful to again get him to come on our show and to participate and to just have a great conversation about gardening in general and growing. And then again, too, to pair him up with Nate Murray last week on last Sunday edition with our gardening roundtable with them was just spectacular. You'll definitely want to go back and check that out as well too. So again, let's see who we all got joining with us here today in the chat. And of course, right at the top of the show, we want to say hi to our good friend and chat facilitator, Jay Dixon, joining us from Huron County, Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining in with us here. Thanks for your participation, all you do to help out with our chat. And again, keep an eye out as we're talking and discussing throughout the show. Jay will throw in some really great links for you all so that you can follow to other channels, other bits of information on things that we're talking about and all of that. Jay does such an exceptional job in helping us add just a bit more to what we're doing here on the show. So definitely check that out in the chat as well too. And again, also, if you do have any channels or anything like that as well, mention that as well. Jay will be kind enough to put a link to all of your channels that other people can join and check out what you've got growing on your channels. And again, too, like I was mentioning just a minute ago, that's kind of what we're really all about here on the Let's Get Growing show. We are about the gardening community. We are about growing the gardening community and being just having a place here where we can all gather, hang out, and visit with all of these other great, exceptional gardeners in the gardening community who are out there putting out great content for all of us and everything too. So being here and participating with everything with us live or on the replays is really great and helps us build the gardening community. So if you do have a channel, definitely mention that as well too. Looks like we've got Rick joining with us here from the future in Sydney, Australia. He says it's 6 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. Not only is it 6 a.m. though, we are here on Saturday here in the States. Rick's joining us from Sunday. So he's joining us from the future at 6 a.m. on Sunday. So really great for you to take your time, get up nice and early to be here with us on the Let's Get Growing show. Thank you so much, Rick, for joining here today. And of course, we got our other facilitator, Adam Burley joining with us from right down the road. Adam just lives right down the road from me here in Southern Oregon. Thank you so much, Adam, for being here today and participating in the show. And let's see here. We got Big Will Dog in the soil joining with us here. And he says, I will listen while doing my last bit of fall cleanup. Yeah, it's fall cleanup time. The trees are finally, for me, starting to drop in the leaves and everything around. So I'm able to finally this week start collecting all my leaves, mulching them up. We're going to be tucking in a lot of our garden beds that we tuck in for the winter time by mulching them nice and deep with our leaf mold and all of that as well. So, lots and lots of things going on always in the garden throughout the year, but fall is definitely that time where we're really, we're cleaning up, we're getting things ready, we're thinking about what we're going to be doing for next year, maybe changing some things up or making plans of changing some things up in our garden spaces and all of that. Fall is a great time to kind of reset and rethink about what we're thinking about doing for our next growing season. And again, too, lots of things to also grow in the fall in lots of different places as well, too. Some places it might get just a little too cold and, but a lot of places, especially all of you gardeners there in more southern areas, you guys can grow throughout the fall, throughout the winter time and all of that. So sometimes a lot of us have a lot of things that we're continuing to grow, or we're overwintering, or we're doing a lot of other types of cool and cold season gardening projects and all of that as well too. So lots and lots of that going on for all of us. Looks like we've got Jersey Girl joining with us here too. Hey, Jersey Girl, thanks for taking your time joining with us here in on the show. Looks like we got Shantae joining with us here. Thank you so much for joining with us. Shantae joining with us from West Central Alabama. Awesome. Excellent. So great to have you here with us today. Let's see if we got anybody else here joining with us. All right. Yeah. And if you are joining with us, definitely jump into the chat there. Say hi. Let us know that you're here. And, love talking with all of you and seeing all of you here. And, right on. So we've got, like I said, we've got a really great show ahead for you here today. Lots and lots of things growing on and great conversations to come. So we'll be right back in just one moment here, and we'll check out who we're following this week. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
Hi everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, here with another trivia question. Which of the following cool weather crops can tolerate the coldest temperatures? A. Peas, B. Kale, C. Broccoli, or D. Onions? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
All right. Do you know the answer to Sarah's trivia question this week? Definitely jump into the chat there, or if you're here on the replay, down in the comments as well too. And again, it's cool season. What kind of plants and which one of those plants can handle the coldest temperature? All right. And real quick here too, before we move on, let's also here, I wanted to make sure we are acknowledging who else we got here. Looks like we've got Darth X joining with us here in the chat as well. We've got Tony from Simplify Garden joining back up with us here too. Tony, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining with us today. Right on. Oh, and he says that he had to get his son, so he couldn't get here at the start. Oh, well, you got here plenty of time anyways. We're just getting started. We're just getting going today, for sure. And let's see here too. I think Jersey Girl was saying something. Well, the forests are burning all around me. I had to evacuate on Thursday. So scary. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Again, too, such a late season this year, which also pushes the fire season out even later as well too. And again, too, so scary. I know so much about what that's about here too in Southern Oregon. We have to do lots and lots of that sort of stuff. We got Sam joining with us as well too. Stay safe, Jersey Girl. Yes, definitely get out and listen to the authorities in those situations when it's emergencies and weather related things like that too, man. Get out of those places for sure. And excellent. Let's see here. Just make sure I'm not missing out on anybody before we get moving on here. But again, thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you all so much for joining in on the chat. And again, if you haven't jumped in to say hi yet, jump into the chat there. And all right, man, let's see who we're following this week.
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right, everybody. Let's welcome back to the show our good friend from Garden State Gardener, the Grow Big TV channel. We've got with us Joe Kozlowski. How you doing, Joe? How's everything growing?
It's still growing. It's November, even though, like Tracy Girl said, it is. We got so many fires around here. It is unbelievable. Just it's surrounding us. You wake up in the morning, it's like California when you have all the fires for a while. I never seen.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. In some ways, it's kind of crazy about how warm of a fall we've had. I mean, it's just kind of crazy how late things are and all of that too. But when you got a warm fall like this, that really just extends out that fire season, to later dates and everything. And it's really something to be hearing about you up there in Jersey dealing with so many. I know there got some really bad ones down in Southern California at the moment too, but you guys over on the East Coast as well. It's just nobody's safe from this sort of stuff.
We haven't had rain in 2.5 months, I think. Maybe a little drizzle. And before that, it was really dry in late summer. So it's basically just been extremely dry around here. Hey, Tony, how you doing? And hi, everybody in the chat. It's just so good to see everybody. Yeah, I just got back from the garden. I just took a shower. I'm still harvesting. I know you can't really see it. I have to take it. Oh, yeah.
Look at all that.
So I got some.
Still harvesting peppers, huh?
Yep. It's got some. A lot of jalapenos, a lot of peppers. But still gotten some tomatoes. Let me see which is one. A little orange one. It's like a goodie bag. This is my trick or treat bag.
That's right. Lots of stuff. I'm still, again, too, such a late year. That one, what kind is that? That looks like a King Star lemon starburst almost.
I have no idea. You know what? In the beginning of the year, I was very organized. And then I had so many things happen in my life. It's like, all right, if I have time, I go outside and pick, and that's about it. I'm still getting some tomatoes, too.
Yeah, tomatoes, peppers. It's really amazing. Again, too, I'm still not seeing any real significant frost here in Southern Oregon as well.
No jalapeno. Oh, it's orange jalapeno. That's just from Baker's Creek. Not sure which this one is.
It's a chocolate variety of some sort, huh?
Yeah. Maybe a chocolate habanero.
Yeah.
But I love the tomatoes.
Again, like I said, so many good ones coming off the plants right now still. Usually by this time of year for me in Southern Oregon, peppers and the tomatoes and all of that sort of stuff are already frosted out. I've pulled most of them, brought them in the house for the remainders that you got to ripen up inside of the house and everything. But man, I'm still out there, still looking at the forecast and still not seeing any significant frost yet. So we're still waiting on letting our tomatoes vine ripen, which is really crazy.
What's been a big help is biochar.
Oh, yeah.
Biochar is, a lot of people just put so much biochar in. It takes time. You add the biochar, you added some kind of compost, you add it. Everything's great in moderation. If you add too much, it's terrible. But every year you add it in moderation, what a difference. I mean, even with the drought, I'm still growing those kind of vegetables. And that's all to biochar. I totally, because everything, all the moisture, it stays there. It doesn't escape. Total game changer this year. I was expecting to get nothing out there.
Right.
I really was expecting nothing at all.
Man,
but that's all.
I gotta start start thinking about maybe adding some biochar to my garden spaces as well too. As more and more I learn about that sort of stuff as well, the more encouraged I am to give it a shot. You know, this year the game changer for me was growing my own worms and worm castings, and being able to create my own vermicompost teas and that sort of stuff. And that's what we fed our garden with this year, you know, as well as the compost and the things that we are already doing and everything. But that was a big game changer for me. But maybe next year I'm going to start maybe working on some of that biochar as well.
And like Tony says, charge it first. You know, you use fish emulsion, but you know, it can't just put it in there. Okay, that's it. It's just going to stay there, and that's about it. It takes time. You know, just Azomite. Azomite's not. Tony taught me this actually. Azomite's not going to do anything for your garden for a whole year. So even if you added it, it's not going to do anything. If anything, very, very little. So it's time. It's time to plan next year. You know, I'm so excited.
I know. If there wasn't so many things still going on, you know, and again, I think like as we were talking about, the later growing season is still, you know, I'm still harvesting, I'm still working plants from my summertime where I'm usually moving on and starting to get things changed over. You know, again, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our leaves are finally starting to fall off the trees. So I'm starting to collect leaves, starting to, you know, get that stuff mulched up and ready to, cover all of our beds that we don't grow in and all of that through the season. So we got a lot of that stuff going on. But at the same time, this is also the time that we start thinking about next growing season. What are we going to do? Are we going to change anything that we did from this last year? Are we going to change any of our spaces, maybe kind of readjust some things or rearrange some things and all that sort of stuff? So this is kind of what we're really working on at this time of year as well, too, right?
Oh, definitely. My biggest thing is finding a time. So since the summer, my son had surgery and he's doing really awesome right now, which is all, you know, I'm ecstatic about it. He's doing great in school. He had like every single class he had was like a 98 average, except for Spanish. Spanish was a 93. So I was like, oh, come on, Joe, you couldn't answer one question, right? At that 95.
Yeah. Again, too, you know, for those who don't know, your son has a condition that he needed some surgeries for this last year, and again, we follow your channel and all of that sort of stuff. You kind of been on a little bit of a hiatus to kind of focus on family for a while and all of that, and sometimes it's just the most important thing we got to do, and put everything else on the back burner, right?
It's part family, part my mess financially. And my job, I've been doing medical billing. It's been 29 years, and that's going out of business.
Okay,
and so I was told this summer we only had to November, maybe actually before November, but we're going to do it to the end of the year. So I had to find another job. So I'm like, okay, where am I going to find another job? I want to get out of medical billing. I want to get out of that industry. Basically, I've been working 70 hours a week because I'm on salary doing that one job. So, okay, where am I going to do? So I'm like, I'm going to drive a bus.
There you go.
So I'm driving a bus. So right now I'm working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And trying to get everything in. So I'm basically sleeping 4 hours a night.
Oh,
like right after I'm done here. And I usually Uber on weekends, but last week I had a dare. Or 2 weeks ago, dare. So yeah, I know. Poor dare.
Right. I know.
And so with that's been my car has an issue, so I can't Uber. But I can get back and forth another car, you know, right now and everything. But it's a total mess. It really is, Nick. It's So right now we're trying to figure out, are we going to move next year? Are we going to do something else? Or we're going to stay here 3 years? That's been a big issue. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do in a garden next year if I have all these issues? Should I start? What kind of method am I going? If I have free time, how am I going to get out there and do what? What's my plan? You know, like one of the first things I say, know your space. Well, I grow too much. I have a large
Right.
growing space. So am
Yeah.
I going to use ground cover? Am I going to use cover crops all year? Just let it rest certain parts? Am I just going to keep on planting and see what happens? How
Right.
am I going to protect my garden? What is
Yeah.
your garden layout? And that's what you guys should figure out. What is your garden layout? Like your space in it, it's not, you grow a lot in pots and little small spaces or urban
Mhm.
gardening kind of things like that.
Yeah.
And so and then you got to choose your plants.
Yeah.
So I haven't got, I know I can't do financially, but man, I really want to start getting those books and catalogs and order all these seeds.
I know. It's that time of year too as well. Those things are showing up in the mail. We're gotten, which then starts getting that mind going, like what can I grow? What new am I going to add to my garden and all of that? But again, too, you're dealing with also this complication of, am I going to be moving on from this space too? So what do you do in the meantime? Or if you're anticipating that sort of thing as well, but, and just keep on growing, right?
Keep on growing, keep on putting it out there and see what happens. But I
Yeah.
got to protect my growing space. I got to
Yeah.
protect my garden. So deer did get in my garden. Everything's half of my garden is stripped. So it's
Yeah.
interesting where they leave the peppers for you, but they eat every single leaf off the tree. It's like somebody just took a pepper. Okay, you can take it inside for the year. Everything's cleaned out. Just clean those roots.
Yeah, yeah. Now we know why what that happened to that deer then, right? Yeah, they could be one of the worst pests if you've got to deal with them coming into your gardens. I'm lucky for me that I grow, so much closer to my downtown area of my city that I live in and everything too. They don't wander as far into the city that as as some people who live more on the outskirts have to deal with and everything. But man, they'll tear up a garden for sure.
Oh, well, they love mine. They know where mine is. So
Right.
I have a fence and everything, but what happened is I have 14 acres behind me. They're
Yeah.
building houses.
Oh yeah.
So everything's, so everybody, all the animals are trying to find, hey, where am I going to go? Where's my new home? Hey, there's Farmer Joe's.
Right.
And it's funny. All the kids call me Farmer Joe on my bus. It's comical.
Oh, that's great. That's the perfect name though, right?
I was like,
Farmer
what else?
Joe.
Yeah, what else? What else is, I'm gonna have a whole bunch of vegetables. I gave a whole bunch of jalapenos when I started. Hey, you guys want some jalapenos?
Oh yeah, there you go. I'm sure they love those, right?
Oh, I grew a ton of them. That's for sure. It's so good to see everybody in the chat. I haven't been around I really miss everybody.
Yeah. Again, too, that was, again, important to, get things focused. You had a lot of those family issues again with your son and everything too, which was really important, and then again, I understand completely what you're talking about, working another jobs and doing all this other stuff that you got to do as well. And then trying to fit in what you want to do here with your own channels and your own community and all that sort of stuff becomes a lot more complicated then.
Well, you just got to be positive and move forward. It's like gardening Marcus. He's a very positive guy. What support he has with his wife. Lead him on his journey there. I think that's pretty cool. You guys are in a treat for that. So, but also it's time to prepare the soil. So you're talking about leaves and stuff like that. What are you going to add to your soil? You can't just keep on using what's in the soil. You got to add to it, right?
Yep.
So you got to add that compost, add those leaves. I'm lucky I live in New Jersey. Try to find some seaweed sources in the summer, but get that salt off of it,
Yeah.
We have everything's here on earth for a reason. So utilize it. It's there for you to utilize it.
Yeah, and really think as natural as possible when you're trying to think about those sort of things, whether, you're trying to mulch things up, or again, you mentioned cover crops and all that sort of stuff are great things to be thinking about too, if you're trying to, maintain your space until the next growing season, just those sort of things, to really, help build the soil, because when it comes down to it, it starts with and comes down to what we're doing to take care of our soil, which is, the medium of our garden art that we have, that we're doing. And our plants grow best when when we're really maintaining a good soil structure.
And you know what, Tony? I'm so excited right now what's going to happen with the changes in the ag world.
Yeah.
Right. And it changes in the ag world how we're all going to grow our food the nutritious way for me. And it's different for other people, and that's fine. It's just a total difference in kids' health and our health. And I've always been an RFK guy, and I'm not getting political, so I'm not going there, so don't worry. It just, our kids' health is so important. And when you look at other countries and the way their health is, and the ones that use glyphosate and the ones that don't. And I mean, glyphosate is in 80% of our bodies. 80%. Most of everybody here has glyphosate in our bodies, and that's caused cancer. But there's going to be so many changes for the good and the bad and the ugly, because that means change, right?
Yeah.
But when we're talking about the Joel Salatin, being in charge of certain things now, I mean, it's going to be a total, when you're talking about cover crops is going to be coming. So it's going to get out there so much right now, because a lot of people don't even know what cover crops even is. Right.
Yeah. There, and there are a lot of things that we got to be thinking about when it comes to our food and growing and all of that too, is, lots and lots of aspects of gardening and growing and all of that. But, nutrition, health, and those sort of things are really important things. I think that's what really becomes a leading driver to a lot of people in getting into their gardens, is to, or gardening, to, improve those sort of aspects of their lives, the food that, that's out there, and, grocery stores, processed foods, and those sort of things, got all sorts of issues with them as well too. So, it'll be great to see some of the things that are coming our way, and hopefully they do, hopefully, that sort of stuff, but we'll be in more focus for sure. That's I think when it comes down to it, really, the thing that we try to promote the most is finding ourselves in our spaces that we have available to us, so that we can try to at least participate in that in that food process of our own, what we're eating, what we're doing. A lot of us may not be able to grow everything ourselves, but at least, if we're in the garden and growing, we're able to, kind of have a better connection to what our food is and that sort of stuff too. So that's one of the things I love about gardening and growing is that, that's kind of how I got started and all of that. I love all the other aspects of gardening too, which, I can't wait to get into our next conversation as well about all that sort of stuff as well. But, gardening is a thing where we find better health, and it's not just in the food too either. It's also about getting us energized to be out in nature, to do things, in our garden. We had a great conversation with health garden and lifestyle doctor a couple of weeks back, and got into talking about all of these aspects of gardening that we don't even think about are provide us with such a great health benefit, whether whether it's the food and nutrition we're getting, or it's the mental health that we get from our garden, as well as physical health. I mean, the garden gets us up and off the couch and outside and working with our plants and all of that, which provides all these other great benefits too.
Well, when you look at nature, right, you got the spring, you got the birds are out there, the air is different. From a winter kind of air to spring, you smell difference. Everything's starting to grow. You see the process from seedlings going on. Every little part I absolutely love. Living in that's the one best things to live in New Jersey is you have all these seasons. Appreciate each season. I mean, from asparagus, from the first things that pop off out the ground, you're like, oh, look at that, it's coming out soon. Because they grow so fast. It's so exciting. And if you haven't grown asparagus, get some asparagus, guys. It takes three. Good, I'm sorry.
No. I was going to say the same thing. That's one of my top goals this year is to get some asparagus in the ground. So hopefully in a few years I'll be able to really, really enjoy them and everything. It's really one of my favorite things that I love that I don't actually grow in my garden. So I need to do that.
Yeah, I wanted to add cover crops so much this year. That was my plan. I just ran out of money to get to seedlings. So it's just use those leaves. And if you could have If you could do biochar, put some biochar to it. Just make sure you charge it. Name some of the cover crops somebody asks. It's like clover, buckwheat, rye, winter peas. Winter peas is great. Some things like that. So that's some of the things you can use.
Yeah. Lots and lots of great things to be thinking about too. Again, it's just that time of year and everything. When you're talking about anticipating next year or getting started and everything, I always really, my big thing I look forward to about the first of the year, January 1st, it's that week I always get my peppers started. So I know that's one of your favorite things too. So I get those started indoors. I get them growing for several months before I get them outdoors and everything. So again, too, I'm really looking forward to that. It's just right around the corner. Whole nother growing season.
And you had some of the greatest hot pepper people in the world on your channel too. So, I love listening to them, and you can always learn something from.
Did you really enjoy that weekend we had? I want to do that again this next year, where we talked all about hot peppers with Johnny Scoville, and then we had Smokin' Ed Curry. He created the last two hottest peppers in the world, the Carolina Reaper and the new Pepper X and everything. Those were really fun conversations too.
So they have this hot pepper festival in New York City. And Ed's always there. And I missed it this year. I just couldn't make it. We had a family event that day. And I'm like, it's usually Saturday, Sunday, but I Uber too at that time. Yeah. And I missed it. But the year before, I entered the hot donut eating contest.
Oh.
And so they put three things: Carolina Reaper seasoning, something like the silencer, and something else. But I'm thinking 3 donuts. So I'm thinking regular Joni donuts where you could just put it in your mouth. I could eat that in 20 seconds. No big deal. It's going to be great. Then I'll worry. And they give you a big jug of milk, the size of they actually give you 2 sizes of milk like this.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking, all right, I could do this. I'll suffer, go on the side, cry a little bit, and eat it.
Yeah.
So here I have my camera in front of my face. I'm filming it. I have the donut, and they're making fun of me. Hey, look at him. He has a phone in his hand. I'm eating a donut. I put the first donut in my mouth, and I'm like, oh, it's halfway gone. I'm almost there. Then all of a sudden, it was like I kept on chewing. And it was endless chewing. It wasn't hot yet. I felt a little bit of heat.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, it's not going down. What did they put in this donut?
Oh, my.
And you only have 3 donuts. That's all you have to eat. The first one wins, and people are from California, all over the world in that donut contest. And I only got like almost 2 done, and I was like, send somebody else one. But for some reason, whatever they put in that donut, it's like, why am I still chewing? And I realized when I had that feeling, there's no way I'm going to win. Somebody else had
for
it.
Sure. Well, did they get really hot?
Oh yeah, I finished the whole thing of milk.
Oh, did you?
That silencer was pretty silencer to me.
Yeah.
It silenced me up for a little bit.
One of my favorite things right now, though, too, is hot honey.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. That is so good. Telling you. Burns so nice.
I have jalapenos, and I do have a lot of honey. I used to probably use it 4 times a week.
Right on. But yeah, lots and lots of things to look forward to get growing on here. And again, Joe, really great to have you here today, and look forward to, getting and seeing you back on track with the show and all of that. Are you guys doing Grow Big TV still as well?
Yeah, it will gradually get back on. I have to get through my one job first. Working 20 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I don't have time to be anywhere besides work. Right. So 4 hours doesn't give me much time.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
And that ruins my planning. But, buy your books. There's free things. This is from Cornell. Gardening Matters. Just go to Cornell Ag and get a free catalog. You have catalogs all over the place, Mother Earth News, whatever. Go to the library, go get a book, read a book, or go to the bookstore. It's that time to start doing those little things.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And for everybody watching here too, come and participate with our monthly gardening book club that we have on our Sunday edition as well too. We always get to talk with some really awesome authors and some really great books that we get to feature and everything. And then as well too, I know our next guest has got some really awesome books as well too. So many great things. I love reading. I love promoting books and authors and all of that as well too. Just something that we got to stay attached to, keep them garden books going.
Without a doubt.
All right.
Well,
thank you so much, Joe, for
on.
having me here. It's been great to see you. And again, everybody get down below in the description there and a link to Joe's channel, Garden State Gardener, and go follow along with him as he's getting back into doing some more live streaming and all of that. And again, it was really great to have you here with us, Joe. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
And don't grow big TV. We have a lot of great stuff in store. So we're coming back soon. So
yep. Check out Grow Big TV as well too. Excellent. Thanks, Joe.
Great to see everybody. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is B. Kale is a hardy brassica that can tolerate temperatures as low as 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, peas can tolerate temperatures down to 22 degrees, broccoli down to 26, and onions down to 20 degrees. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
So, all right. Did you all get the question right this week? Sarah always gives us some great gardening questions. And it's really kind of amazing how some of those plants, especially the brassicas, can really handle some cold temperatures. Kale, for one, is one that most of us can grow mostly year round. And again, broccoli surprised me early on in gardening and everything because I grow in a lot of containers. And so I got some broccoli going in probably just, late winter time, thinking, it's going to start warming up soon. Let's get them going. Let's get them out there. I got them in these containers. And then we had this really hard freeze. And I went out there and these plants, which were good, they were probably good medium-sized plants at the time. I went on there and the soil is just rock hard, just knocking on it, really hard soil. And I thought, oh man, these things are done in for sure. And was completely surprised, that they grew just fine and kept on growing when it warmed right back up and everything. So they can handle some really good freezing temperatures when it comes down to it. Again, it really goes to show us that we can, there's lots of things that we can continue to grow throughout our winter season. And in some regions, it's probably the best season to be growing a lot of that sort of stuff as well too. But again, thank you, Sarah, so much, Sarah, for the garden trivia there. And again, like I said, we've got links down below for everything. So go and check out a link to Sarah's Seed Shop there at sarahseedshop.com and go and check out and get some of her garden seeds that she has available there. Because again, you're not going to find any better value for seeds anywhere. I know there's some great ones out there like MI Gardner, who does a lot of great value seeds and all that. Sarah beats everyone. You're going to get some really great essential garden seeds, most of the things that we all are growing, and for a really inexpensive price. I believe somewhere around 75 cents or so, something like that. She might even have to think about raising her prices, but I don't know, 75 cents, and you get a good amount of seeds too in each one of your orders too. So go and check out sarahseedshop.com and go and get some of those seeds as we're planning and thinking about our gardens for this next season. So, all right, everybody, it's time to get moving on today. We've got a really great featured guest for you all here today.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
All right, everybody. Let's welcome to the show author and as I would say, garden inspirationalist, Marcus Bridgewater from Garden Marcus, joining with us today. Thank you so much for taking your time out today and joining with us today, Marcus.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Ah, man, I love the background there. That's great. And I got someone on the show with kind of almost a competing background. It's awesome.
Yeah. I was admiring yours for the whole show. It's a really impressive and condensed space.
Yeah. This is probably, well, there's plants growing everywhere, but I definitely push them all into the background, or as many of them as I can back there. But yeah. Got to have your plants growing all around you, especially, for those of us who are, again, getting into colder winters. We can move into our houses and take care of and keep going with our gardening and everything as well.
Yeah. A lot of people are transitioning the outdoor garden into an indoor space of some sort, indoor garden. I have a lot more plants that fill this space around me that will come back inside here in the next 2 months.
Yeah. Where do you garden and grow out of?
I'm in North Houston.
Okay.
But the last 4 years, we've had frosts every year, and all of my tropical and subtropical, so many of the plants that I love don't do so well in that weather. So they've got to get transitioned. That's why I ended up building a greenhouse to put many of them into, but an entire portion of them will come back inside.
Yeah. I don't take too many of them outdoors. There's a couple that I like to get outdoors. They just really appreciate that better sun and that sunlight and everything. But again, for those who live in your regions, though, too, you can get away with a lot more of that than we can in the more northern areas. So
absolutely, I've found that there's some things, unless I put a lot of grow lights inside the house, they just won't survive. A lot of calatheas don't like it indoors, but the moment I put them anywhere outside with a little bit of shade, they thrive. And that's been a consistent learning curve for me. Is like, oh, I like this plant, but will you survive the house, the environment that I've already started to curate? And a lot of times the answer is no. But that doesn't mean that the plant won't survive. I usually just have to find a new location, a new space for it. And most often that's outside somewhere.
Yeah. And like you're saying, the calatheas, I have problems with them all the time. I've got one that's actually down below here that's giving me trouble. And then the one I've got right behind me finally is adjusted more to the area. But again, too, it does require, growing spaces like this do require a lot of extra light. And a lot of people don't get to see it on the show here. But before I start the show and after, I have to move lights that I bring into the space here behind me. So there are lights that just really brighten up this area and everything a lot more that I have to have in order to have these in order to have this sort of garden.
Plants couldn't survive without it.
Yeah, definitely. Especially a lot of our indoor plants will do a lot better. And even those ones that you see on the tag that say low light, that just means that they're kind of low light tolerant. It doesn't really mean that they don't want to have and be around some good bright lights. So
it's made me very conscious as I've spent more and more time around plants and seen the correlation between the plants and people, that there are a lot of times where like, oh, a full sun or a shade plant, right? But not all plants that want direct sunlight want the same amount of direct sunlight. So, you know, there's a consistent like full sun, 4 to 6 hours. It's like, well, there's actually not enough for some of the plants that I have. And that's way too much for others. And it's been interesting to see where the blanketed prescription, the blanketed descriptions apply, and how we've done that for our plants. And in doing so, you don't think about the nuances and the differences. And even in a plant that's low light, right? You're like, oh, well, just because it's low light doesn't mean it can go without any light, and for how long.
Right.
And the degrees of low, right? If we put a filter on a lamp, how many layers of that filter do we have? Well, some plants want 1 layer, some plants want 2, some plants want 3. And it's just the same thing with us as people, right? We have a lot of things in common, but there's also a ton of nuances and differences. So blanketed prescriptions don't necessarily work, right? It's like, it's really important whenever we engage with curating an environment for our growth, we are persistent in our observation and our awareness, and making sure that we're tailoring and adjusting the minute to what works for us. Otherwise, we're just reading on Google what works for someone else and trying to recreate the same thing, and then that can lead to some chaos.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of things like that in the gardening space is, you know, these things are all part of the learning process. I mean, even for myself, you know, early on, we talk about, you know, the amount of light, you know, again, you know, this blanketed description that we'll get, you know, full sun, you know, being one, you know, again, I had to learn. It took me a couple of seasons to really get down the fact that, you know, full sun doesn't mean full blaring sun, even for some of your most heat tolerant plants, you know, peppers. I had a pepper garden up on a carport rooftop that I had, this container pepper garden and everything. And they would grow great until we got right into that hottest part of summer. And then all of a sudden my pepper plants are burning, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is full sun though.
Right. This is the best kind of full sun. This is like extra full, you know?
And then I learned a couple seasons later, wait a minute, I got to bring in a shade cloth during this time of year in order to kind of shade these things out and give them a little bit of break from that midday sun, because they're just getting scorched up here. So even full sun doesn't really mean full sun. And these are things that we have to kind of adjust to as we figure out and learn more about the spaces that we're growing in.
100%, 100%. And I think that gardening promotes a type of, and I say gardening, but I'm now thinking we've got to become even more articulate around what type of gardening, because a lot of gardening today has been driven by the desire to produce and the yield, and that has been one of the things I think has consistently tricked humanity, because that push for the reward often means we put so much focus and so much attention to that one goal, we stop looking at all of the nuances and all of the things that are happening around it. We start destroying and curating and doing things just so we can get that set of potatoes, just so we can get that pepper. But there's so much to be said about just engaging with growing different things and what that teaches us about the nuances and about life, and how we can translate that information into growing better peppers, growing better potatoes and whatnot. But it has been interesting to hear people talk about their garden and then talk about the anguish they feel in their garden if something goes wrong, or if they don't get the product they were hoping to produce, or the quantity they were hoping to yield. But when you've engaged with gardening for some time, you start to realize everything takes time, and you've got to be really deliberate now for what will happen in the future, but you can't rush that. That's a process of incremental adjusting. So it's been a profound experience for me to go through that process of learning and feel like I'm still constantly learning. But I'm not driven by the desire to yield and to produce. That's like a fun byproduct for me. So
and that's, and that's a big thing for newer gardeners out there to understand as well too, is that gardening, although I believe, and I know a lot of gardeners believe, that gardening isn't as hard and as complicated as it seems. But yet at first it can be, and what you have to be willing and open to is the learning process itself.
Absolutely.
That you're not going in it to become a farmer right away and get all of this sort of stuff that you're looking to get out of these plants and these sort of things. You are engaging in a learning process to, help grow a bit yourself as a person. And all of that too, and again, I think there's so many values in gardens. It's just amazing. The more and more I learn about it. And another point there too on that line is I've had guests on this show who are 40-50 year gardeners who are telling you the same, telling you, hey, I'm still learning. This is a learning process for me, and I've been doing this decades and everything. So we have to learn right from the get-go that we are engaging in a learning process that's going to really never end.
Yes. And it brings up a thought that I've been having recently. That's the idea of gardening and how I think that it is much more of a modern idea than not, because I think when you think of what the garden is, right? The garden is a curated plant space. Well, nature is just full of plants, right? So if like you think about like just walking into the woods, walking into a forest, like that was the first school. You know what I mean? That's where we really engaged with life and information, and we gained knowledge from those things. Over time, as we went away from that, there was this awareness, well, we can't survive without it. So I think that's where gardens came from. Our gardens were the civilized humans' attempt to make sure we're still engaging with nature. We can't eat without it. We can't grow things without it. And then think about how many wealthy people of the past cleared so much land, and then we're like, well, this is not what I want. Let's put a ton of nature here, fill it with lavender and fill it with thyme and fill it with all kinds of things that smell good. And so I think there's something to be said about how the garden, the idea of gardening, presents both an opportunity to learn, but an opportunity to heal. An opportunity to engage with the oldest practice. And I think that because we are treating it like it is new aged and that it is like a car, we tend to be very skittish about how we interact with it, right? We got to make sure we've got all of the right components. Like we want to test drive it. We want to do all kinds of things like we do with a car, but the same way that a car, has a lot of parts to it. And when you're a kid and you're looking at it and it's this massive thing and you just want to play with the wheel, gardening has a lot of parts to it. But once you actually get in the driver's seat and start to go, it becomes almost second nature to engage with the vehicle. It's not so much of a chore the same way. So and again too, maybe in a relation to historical aspects of gardening and all of that to more modern aspects of gardening. Historically, gardens were really, principally survival
food. This
Mhm.
is what, it was necessary, and it was necessary work and all of that. And I'm sure there were probably some sort of aspects of, those sort of things that we see and get from our gardens in a more modern sense, the other
Yeah,
benefits of gardening that we get, these mental health benefits, these physical health benefits, these sort of things that we kind of focus more in on that activity than maybe what they did historically, in that
right.
sort of sense. And as human growth is growing and growing and growing, we're losing more and more of those spaces, and it becomes even more essential for us to reconnect with that natural process.
I agree 100%. I think about how many gardens are written about throughout history. The Babylon gardens and
Yeah,
the Indian gardens. There's just so many gardens throughout history that people have acknowledged and spent time thinking about and sharing and
yeah,
reminding people, like, despite how big a civilization gets, you still want to go engage with some form of nature. I think a lot of times we don't realize it because we've gotten so consumed with
hmm,
the push of the world's engine, the 9 to 5 and the roads and the
yeah,
traffic and um,
yeah,
technology. All of those things I think have grown in such a rapid rate that people are more consumed now than ever, and
yeah,
they're taking less time to just stop and go spend time under a tree. They're
yeah.
spending less time to just walk through a field and smell the lilies.
Yeah. And that's why it's important too to have folks like yourself and others out there who are out there really trying to encourage people to reconnect with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So real quick here, let's kind of take a jump back a little bit here in this
Okay.
conversation here. And I want to kind of learn a little bit more about Garden Marcus. How did Marcus Bridgewater, kind of get started on this whole journey to plants and gardening and all that sort of stuff?
Oh, it was a really epic journey. So go back almost 10, 15 years now, and I'm a organizational consultant at a monastery.
Okay.
And I'm spending time in the woods and in trees. I've got an owl that's a friend. I've befriended the deers and
Oh, yes.
and chipmunks and all sorts of stuff. Ended up actually upsetting some of my monk friends because I brought the deers back because I didn't know that the deers were ruining their garden and their roses.
Yeah.
And so I was out in nature and enjoying it. I was an independent contractor, and so I worked for a month here, and I'd build things, and then I'd work for a month there, and then I'd take a month off. And as an independent contractor, I was a theme designer and a consultant. And so I might show up and you'd say, hey, I want to turn my house or this club, this restaurant, this convention center into Arabia or into a castle or into a beach. And I'd sit there and look at it, take all the measurements, and I go back, I draw it, I design it, and put it all together and show you your options. And if you decided to take the bid, I'd build it and install it and tear it all down as well. So I was as an independent contractor, I was a production house. And the reason I say that is because I was hired as an administrator at a private preparatory in Texas. And I went from living a life of independent contracting and having a lot of freedom to working a more structured life and living a 9 to 5 experience. And I hadn't done that. And it was a really challenging and new way to live. And upon doing so, I was living an hour. Well, it was only 40 minutes, 40 miles away from work. But because of Houston traffic, that turned into an hour and a half to 2 hours of traffic some days, both ways. So I bought a house closer to the school. Well, my oldest friend's mom, she owned a nursery and she was closing at nursery when I bought my house. So she gifted me 40 exotic plants, and she had been in the nursery for 40 plus years. So these weren't just like your random exotic plants. These were calatheas with leaves this big, pothos inside of a 10-inch planter that had vines this thick. It was like these were top-notch premium plants. And I brought them back to my house. I put them all over my house, and I shut the blinds, I shut the windows, and I went back to work for what was 70 to 90-hour weeks.
Oh,
and
my.
within a couple of months, I'd killed more than half of those plants. And I was devastated. And in the devastation, I was like trying to figure out what can I do to keep them alive. So I'm giving them more and more water, and that doesn't seem to be helping at all. And I had a friend tell me that they were giving away plants at the box stores, and they were selling them super cheap. So I went to Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart in my area, and sure enough, they had a ton of sweet potato. And it had happened that the area had gone through a drought, so there was an abundance of sweet potato ivy everywhere. Well, I bought cases of it, put it in my truck, and brought it home, and I put it all over the house. I'm talking every corner inside my house. I had sweet potato.
Oh, yes.
Sweet potato doesn't grow inside. It is a full sun plant. I thought sweet potato was pothos.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so I was very confused about vines. I had a lot to learn. And all of that put me in this place where I just was engaging with plants all the time. And I was just absorbing tons of information. And I didn't realize it was teaching me how to be a better gardener until all of a sudden I saw plants and was like, oh, there's life in that plant. And that was a huge game changer. And I wasn't called Garden Marcus until a good friend came over to the house to help me fight with the squirrels. It was a squirrel battle. The squirrels had picked my first strawberries and were very cruel about it. And I was determined to keep the rest, but I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. And a friend came over to help me. And she said, you know, you talk about your garden all the time and you love to use it in references and metaphors. Why don't you call yourself Garden Marcus? And it was like, oh, okay. Why would I do that? And she was like, oh, a good screen name matters. And I didn't know what that meant. Any of my things on social media were just random letters and words. I didn't really use social media, so I didn't understand the importance of those things. But she's now my wife. That friend of mine is now my wife. Oh, and awesome. It was my wife's idea to call me Garden Marcus. And that was many years ago. But that is a very condensed version of how Garden Marcus came to be,
Yeah. So you didn't really at first visualize yourself as a content creator in this sort of
no, not at all. She actually told me to call myself Garden Marcus on Instagram. It was another year and a half, almost 2 years later, that a former student of mine came home on a holiday break and said, hey, you should put your essence onto TikTok because you've helped me and you've helped so many different people. You should do that on TikTok. I thought TikTok was a calendar app. So I was like, what are you talking about? Why would we do that?
Right.
And it was then that my wife and myself put our heads together and realized we could put Garden Marcus on TikTok, and it had the potential to possibly impact some people and maybe share some kindness with them and some positivity. And I had no idea that it would go so far and it would be the beginning of my life changing.
Yeah. So what was some of that early stuff you were creating and doing?
Well, everything was all about kindness, patience, positivity, trying to encourage people to maximize their potential. So I think back to a couple videos that like just resonate with me all the time. One, the first video for the ASMR, right? We had some chomping of the clips, but I was cutting back some elephant ears. And the idea was to encourage people to remember to prune themselves, just like we have to prune our plants, because we go through changes. And if we don't prune ourselves, we could wind up having more clutter and more debris, clogging our mind, clogging our being, keeping us from actually growing to our fullest potential. So those were the types of content that we create.
So then plant care.
Yes, yes. So there was also some plant care in there, right? You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
consider these elements. Every plant is affected by where it grows and
Yeah.
who it grows with. Not every plant's going to grow great together. The same
Right.
is to be said about you. You're affected by where you grow and who you grow with. Not every personality type is going to encourage you to grow, but the same
Yeah.
personality type might encourage someone else to grow. So being conscious of who you're around and when and where matters to help you maximize your potential. Same way with my pathos. The amount of
Yeah.
people who sent me really long messages and were like, dude, that changed my life. Not only did it
Mhm.
make me a better gardener, but it also made me a better person. I was like, holy cow, thanks. It's great.
Yeah, you gotta love that when people are giving you that sort of feedback and everything from what you're doing and putting out there and all of that.
Oh yeah, it's been a real blessing to have the audience engagement that way.
Yeah, yeah, and again too, with social media, YouTube, TikTok, all these sort of things have created avenues for a lot of folks like yourself and myself and others too that we talk to here on the show to be able to kind of extend just a bit of themselves into this space and be able to help bring and welcome others into it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been it's been a fascinating process to see what the social media has done to connectivity.
Hmm.
But I say but because for the balance of humanity, for all the good, there's also the potential
Hmm.
for bad, right? And
Oh,
so it requires us, just like if we're on a balancing beam, to engage our core and be disciplined in
yeah.
what moves we make. I think that social media has presented a great scenario for people to have to make a choice on how disciplined they are,
Hmm.
because there is so much ability to change and
Yeah.
to inspire, to influence, to engage. Um,
Yep.
I don't know that any of what I've experienced in the last 4 years would have been possible without social media.
Hmm.
And it has been truly profound to see how far of a reach you can have through it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's a lot of people who I've seen haven't been using it for that. They are consumed with the distraction.
Yep.
And it is not influencing their discipline in a healthy way. And it's turning social media into a toxic space. But
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that, you know?
It doesn't have to be. Exactly. And that's, one of the things too, like you said, there's always some sort of balance, whether it's in nature or it's in our social system that we live in and all of that is that, with the good, there comes bad. And we have to understand how to balance that out or to recognize those sort of things. It's one of the things I love about gardening and the gardening community, especially when it comes to social media, is that, I kind of consider some of us out here as the warriors against the bad side of what goes on, in
Absolutely.
social media. You're going to, find positive things in your life, positive things, not things that are distracting us in a negative way, and we see a ton of that. It's just a ton of that. And it's always in a battle, it seems, against what is what the good stuff that's going out there. And I think that more and more people can find these sort of things, like like what you're putting out there, what a lot of other people are putting out there, can help them see and understand that and find better community, because that's what the biggest benefit all of this is there are people, and we people that are connecting with each other that never would have before.
Absolutely.
I've never got to talk to all these awesome people that I get to talk to on this show if
Yep.
it wasn't for this this media being available to us.
Agreed. Agreed. And that's it's a powerful thing to use the medium for that purpose.
Hmm.
I've made a point that everything we put out will be some form of kind, patient, or positive. That doesn't mean that I won't address real issues. That doesn't mean that I won't make myself
Yeah.
vulnerable or share things that are in some mediums controversial, but
Yeah.
it means that I'm not sharing them to be controversial or
Hmm.
to perpetuate animosity or instigation. I truly believe we can't have a quality community without
Yep.
conversation.
Yep.
And we can't have a quality conversation if we're not being kind, patient, and positive to each other.
That's right.
Any conversation without those things is likely to just add to the dissonance and turn into an argument. And we have so many people arguing left and right. And I'm like, well, no, you don't need to argue. You guys, you got to put your egos aside. You guys got to stop feeling like what you feel matters more than everything else. And you've got to compromise and come to a place where you're being kind to the other person, despite whatever happened to you, being patient with the other person.
And that's
despite
again
what pressures you feel. And remembering there's an outcome that is possible because solutions exist everywhere. Nature's proven that, but we don't tap into it. And that's the lack of positivity. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the drive that so many people feel today to go, and to respond. And I've seen a lot of people feel that and have had it be fed through their phones, right? Through their interaction and their engagement with social media. And it's like, oh man, guys, that's a really taxing way for you to live. It's not great for your spirit. It's not going to help you build any community. It's just taking years off your life.
Yep. And again, too, and it's in some of those arenas of social media out there that we find those distractions that we're talking about, these negative aspects of things that are being thrown upon us and all of that. And then we're taking some of this stuff to heart in our conversations with other people. We should probably take a bit more of a step back. One of the things I've always kind of talked about and kind of constructed this idea over this last year or so, especially seeing what we were looking towards as we all experienced this week and everything, is that, we were building up to something that's going to create more of that negative aspect in our relationships with each other. And it becomes another benefit of the garden space. The garden space itself, again, too, bringing us back to nature, bringing us back to ourselves and who we really are. And I like the term common ground. The garden space is common ground. It's a place where all of us, our backgrounds, our ideas, our cultures, all that sort of stuff can come to a place that we all can connect with and all have a relationship with. And then we can start those conversations anew. Even the more difficult ones that we should be having, because again, with all of this great social media out there, we're also finding ourselves at a distance from those conversations we should be having with each other.
We're not having the fierce conversations anymore. And I think so to provide a metaphor to this thought process, right? I've been talking to people about the differences in how we've set up our communities. What you're describing is a quality garden. And in the quality garden, we all share the same soil, and we all are working together to share space to get the sunlight that we need so that we can thrive and bring in a bunch of diversity, right? That's the birds, the bees, the butterflies, so that there's more flowers, right? The garden is filled with multiple layers of interconnectivity. But many of us have never been even exposed to a garden type community. Many of us have been living a nursery type community. And in a nursery, right, there are no outside elements. In a nursery, you don't share the same soil. In a nursery, you live in your planter. And it's a dangerous game if you want to even talk to the planter next to you. So we've created a society structured around this idea of nursery where we've got to produce. You are in the nursery to yield. And if you do not yield, you don't keep up, there's no help. There's no commitment to community. And I see that in the juxtaposition between the garden and the nursery. And many of us, I think, have been living a nursery life and feel confused by it, but it's why we don't feel compelled to share kindness, patience, or positivity. It feels like it would be silly or extraneous. And it's like, oh, you've actually never had your feet on the ground. You've never actually been in a place that's designed to help you thrive. And that's why I talk so much about grounding, because in that metaphor is quite literal, that I think a lot of people have been walking around the planet in boots, and they don't know that, like, hey, you got to put your feet on the ground every now and then so you can recharge, just so that the positive and negative ions in you move around, because that's how we've been designed. I don't think that our ancestors would have cut down the chestnut trees or the redwoods if they had been barefoot.
Right.
So it's been a really like a wild lesson for me to learn in gardening. We're not connected to nature, to each other, to our planet. So it's harder for us to have fierce conversations if we can't have a conversation with ourselves.
Right. Yeah, getting too caught up in ourselves and all of that as well too, versus our connections with other people, because it's just so important just to the future of all of us that we figure these sort of things out, because growth, technology, all these sort of things that we talk about, these aspects of life are only going to continue. They're only going to, become more and more a part of each and every one of our lives, that we have to do things purposefully.
Absolutely.
To find those connections with each other. And again, nature, gardens, those sort of things are just great places to get a good start on that.
100%, which is why I talk so much about peace, balance, and harmony. I think that if you look at any tree or any plant and you see it thriving, you can see elements of peace, balance, and harmony in that plant and in the lives of the things growing around it. And I think that if we start to do more to bolster the peace, balance, and harmony in each of our own personal lives, it'll be that much easier to help our neighbor, to help our loved one, our family, our children, our friends. And all of a sudden, then we start to have a strong community.
Yeah. Right on. Well, one of the things I also mentioned too is that Marcus, you're an author, and you've written coming up here, new 2 books. Let's first talk about your first book, How to Grow, Nurture Your Garden and Yourself. Let's see. I want to put this up for everybody real quick. Yeah, this book right here. And again, too, for everybody here, as we're talking about these, there is a link right down below in the description to Marcus's website. And you can find these books and all of that there at his website.
Yeah. What would you like to know about How to Grow?
Tell us about the concept, how it came about. Again, I mean, I'm sure we've touched on a lot of that stuff already in a sense though too, but again, you went from, creating this idea with your now wife and all of that's built into this whole Garden Marcus idea. And then now you applied it to pen to paper and put these concepts into a book and all of that here with this first one, again, How to Grow. Yeah. So just kind of tell us a little bit about that process of how that all came together.
Oh man, it was a really remarkable process. I was still an administrator at the private preparatory, and I got reached out to by a woman to write a children's book, and that was my first book. The children's book actually comes out next year, but that was the first book I wrote. And then I got reached out to write a more adult book. And there was conversation around like, hey, if you had this as an opportunity, what would you write about? Is that even something you've considered? That's a huge endeavor, and a lot of people don't have that type of material, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I have a ton of material and a lot of thoughts that I could share. I've been writing a lot of my life, and I've been studying mind, body, and spirit since I was a kid, because I love the differences in humanity. And it was a fascinating thing for me to find out, well, some other culture prays a different way than I do. When I found that out, I literally went to every friend of mine and asked, how do you pray? And if you pray different than me, can I pray with you? Can I engage in whatever spiritual thing you do? And so mind, body, and spirit have been very important to me my whole life. Well, as I grew older, I found out that the mind, body, and spirit in the modern age were referred to as mental health, physical fitness, and spiritual awareness when you're talking about the state of being of the mind, body, and spirit. And so I was like, oh, I can talk a lot about the varying states of being for mind, body, and spirit, which means mental health, physical fitness, spiritual awareness. So a lot of people were like, oh, you must have gone to school for philosophy. You must have studied psychology. You must be a therapist. You must be a doctor of some sort. And I was like, no, literally, I just have spent hundreds of thousands of hours doing that because that's just my life. That's what I love to do. So putting that into a material for people felt like all of a sudden my life's work had culminated into a purpose. I share these things in every meeting I had as an administrator, every counseling session I had with a student, as a mentor, any problems my friends were facing, and they called me as a confidant. Like, these were the philosophies of thought and help that I would share. So all of a sudden it was like, well, if I could do that there, and it had a huge response on social media, there's a chance that some of those things might resonate inside a book. And so we went to work, laying out the structure of such a thing. And so it's split into 5 sections. The first book, an intro and a conclusion. And then there's 3 sections in the middle: mental health, physical fitness, and spiritual awareness. And it's filled with life lessons from plants. But I also share Marcus tales, which are stories from my childhood. And there are 16 of those. And each story is linked to a lesson, which is also linked to a plant parallel.
Oh, wow.
Because nature is so consistent. I feel fascinated by it all the time, but there's no experience I've ever had that I can't relate to nature. Like that I haven't seen in some facet or form in some of my plants. And so,
got any good examples of one of those?
I got a great one. I had a sweet potato that I got from one of the box stores. I went and they were throwing it away. And I was like, whoa, man, what are you doing? That's got a lot of life in it. And he's like, look at it. It's brown on top and it's crispy. But if you looked, it was still green. They just hadn't watered it properly. So most of the top vines had gone away. And to see in his eyes when he said, well, if do you want it? I'll just give it to you. It's trash. And to see like the reality that he didn't see the weight of what I saw in the plant reminded me of something that had happened earlier, where I was in a counseling session and one of my students, his mom, she had cancer. And in her decline in the cancer, she'd been not so kind to him.
Right.
And he had been having a really hard time. And when you compare him to his peers, he was going through worlds of life and trauma and difficulty that they could never have comprehended and they didn't have to deal with. And there was this moment where I saw a correlation between my student and this sweet potato, where I realized I can't make either thing grow, but I can foster the environment where it wants to grow.
Right.
And if I'm not actively doing that, there's a good chance that life won't feel supported, so it won't grow. So I can't make anything grow, but I can foster environments where things want to grow. That was a game changer. And that's just one of the small examples of parallel between.
Love that. That's just, and again too, great way, like you're saying, making this analyzation between, you know, this aspect of what you're doing and this other one, and being able to correlate them together, especially in the idea of growing. One thing I can relate to, though, and I just shared this story, I've shared this many times with people before, but right behind me here is my pothos. And this pothos I've had since was, I believe, 1998.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
1998. I was working in this restaurant in Spokane, Washington, and they decided that they were going to throw out or get rid of and redesign their dining room. So they went to get new plants and all that. So all the old plants and all that old stuff ended up on this in this dump, basically
No.
in the back of this restaurant. And I remember I was just out there, taking some trash out maybe or something, and I noticed this pile of just dying dead plants. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh. And then, like you're saying, all the just in the death of these plants, I noticed this one little tiny bit of green growing off of the stem, just a little tiny bit of it. And I was like, oh, there's still life in this thing. And I went immediately to my supervisor and I was like, is there any way I can take any of these home or whatever that you got thrown out here and all that? And they're like, oh, take whatever you want. So immediately that afternoon, right after work, I'm lugging home this dead. I mean, it looked dead. I cut it back a little bit and I'm lugging it home because I was walking at the time and I had to walk for a while. So I'm just lugging downtown Spokane, this big old pot of this plant that just looks completely dead. And I'm sure people were wondering what the heck I was doing. But literally, like you said, I fostered an environment that helped encourage it to grow and to come back to life. And here it is 27 years later, and it's still a part of my home. It's actually not only a part of my home, but over the years, I've taken cuttings off of this and shared this with other people. So, it's got pieces of itself growing in other people's homes all over the place and everything too. And just, again, one of those just great things about being able to connect with plants and life and create, like I said, I probably one of my longest relationships.
Right.
Other than, direct family who I grew up with.
That's seriously awesome. And it's the kind of thing that I'm hoping more people engage in, because I think we should have plant walls that pass down in generations, plant spaces that we've been curating for hundreds of years and the thing is, the plant, and I'm not making this up now, right? It used to sound like some very like woo out there thoughts, but like the plant has its own consciousness. Like the plant carries a degree of sentience that has memory. And when you acknowledge that a plant has memory, there is something to be said about how you treat it matters, and how that is reciprocated and given back over years.
Yeah. And one of the things that people can't really see too much is that plant there grows up. And again, we're talking, vines, like right up above the screen here, all the way around. It comes around. There's probably about 40 or 50 feet of it in this direction, probably another 30 feet or so that go in this direction and grow around and all of that.
That's fantastic, dude. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and over the years, I've cut it back and grown it around other places I've lived and all of that. But this is probably, again, the longest place I've ever lived. So this is, the biggest it's ever grown. But again, it just goes to show what what we can do in creating relationships with plants and all of that sort of stuff. And then finding, again, like a sense of I don't know what the right word is, but again, we found this plant, like you were talking about with this sweet potato and all that. We found this thing that was just, it was gone. Otherwise,
yeah.
This whole history wasn't there if I hadn't picked that up that day.
And I think that's something profound, right? That engagement is a stewardship that every human being has the potential for, and we're not using it. So it's like it matters a lot that we think more about how to foster and how to curate so that growth is happening all the time. Every human being should be stewarding some sort of life. And I say that not thinking like, oh, children, is like just plant life. Like every one of us should be doing something to support a tree, to support a bush, to support a ground cover, to support something. And
Yeah.
if every one of us did that, man, the world would be so green. The world would be
Mhm.
so green. We changed life immediately. But I
Yeah.
think there are
Again,
so many of us who are disconnected from nature.
yeah.
That thought sounds foreign. Like that sounds like a fantasy. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, it's literally not
Not at all.
at all. It's not that hard. Like
Yeah.
it really wouldn't be that hard for us to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, too, it just takes a little bit of encouragement for those who don't really quite understand that or connect with that, and it's a good thing that you're out there doing what you're doing and all of that as well. Um, let's see here too. Again, we're talking about books. You do have another book coming out here real soon. This one here is Seasons of Growth,
It is out.
a journal for well-being inspired by trees. Now, that's
Yeah.
one of my first favorite things growing, other than in some of the early houseplants that I got started with my mother and all that, but was trees. I participated when I was young in Arbor Day Foundation in the Pacific Northwest, where we would go out into clear cuts that they would do, and we would replant new trees into these clear cuts and everything when I was young. So I used to go do a lot of that stuff. So I had this big connection to these big trees and
That's
everything that I grew
awesome.
in. So I love this idea of this book that you've got, Seasons of Growth. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
So Seasons of Growth is out. You can get it everywhere.
Yeah.
Seasons of Growth is a journal for well-being inspired by trees, because
Yeah.
I'm using a metaphor that I've been building on for some time. So if you look at most plants, especially trees, you see the leaves, the trunk, and then we know it has roots.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see those roots all the time, but we know they're there.
Yeah.
I liken the tree to a human in the way that the tree has leaves, trunk, and roots. We have a mind, a body, and a spirit. We may not be able to see the spirit,
Yeah.
but we know that we're definitely interconnected to each other in really interesting ways. And the leaves of our mind need sunlight to thrive. Well, if our mind is filled with negativity and clutter, right? Well,
Yeah.
then we're covered and we're not actually going to get the light we need, get the energy we need. And if our body, right, isn't balanced, well, we're going to end up tilting over and we're not going to survive. So when we look at a tree, we think of structure, we think of support, we think of community, we think of resilience and perseverance. And I think that when I look at every human being, I see that potential. And I want to encourage every human being to tap into that potential and to grow to their maximum potential by thinking a lot like our tree role models. And one of the things I realized as I was engaging with more and more people using this in therapy, using this in consultations, was that the trees are adapting to each season. They're changing throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of times I'm in a conversation with someone and I was like, oh, have you considered this? And have you made an adjustment for this season?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. Have you reflected on these thoughts for this season? Well, no, I haven't. Well, that's a part of the problem. You're treating every day as if it's the same, and the 9 to 5 is just what is driving you. But every season is an opportunity to grow in a new way, to challenge ourselves to reflect in a new way. So Seasons of Growth is all about encouraging you to maximize your potential by thinking about your mind, your body, and your spirit independently, but also holistically, and as they go through changes with each season.
Yeah. So just a little bit more of what you're saying, making these connections with our lives and what we're doing with these things that are happening in nature as well.
Absolutely. Because nature is the ultimate. I mean, if you look at any form of engineering we have, it has come from nature. There's nothing that we have been able to do, create, or reproduce that our animal friends, insect friends, or plant friends didn't do better and didn't do
Yeah.
first. Right? It's like there's
Yeah.
just nothing. And so there's something to be said about, well, if we're going to come to our own place of maximizing and actually driving efficiency, we really got to go back to the basics and make sure that we are actually growing with nature,
Yeah.
not against it.
Yeah, which seems to be, it seems to be what the path that all of us are on, are kind of on, is pushing against nature, trying to make it work in our image and our idea, but that's not how this all works.
No, it's
That's
not.
not how it works.
No.
Yeah. All right. So also you have another book too that's going to be coming out here this next year, right? And this is where you're going to jump into doing some literature for kids, right?
Yep. See Marcus Grow comes out next May, and it is a children's book where shout out to my grandmother, who I grew up in her garden, and this is a small Marcus going through the garden and learning about the garden with his grandma, and they end up making a great dish at the end as a result. So
nice.
I think it's going to be a really uplifting experience for a lot of young people.
Yeah. And this is something that they can kind of recreate. Is this like almost like a recipe in action through the book?
Exactly. You're going to go and get your different pieces together, and then you will have made your own salsa.
Ah, perfect. That is so awesome. And it's great salsa too. I did a video a couple years back with my good friend Marcus Colbert. He teaches gardening at a Montessori school in Portland, Oregon,
Awesome.
to all these kids. And so he invited me out one day to kind of do a video and to kind of talk about gardening and education. And that's what they did, is that day they went through all these different garden spaces that they'd been growing throughout that year. And, their assignment was to go pick these certain pieces and go get all these certain things. And then they came back and then he took him through this whole process of, cutting down the tomatoes and the onions and the peppers and all that sort of stuff to create and make their own salsa. So I love that your book's about salsa as well too, because then this comes back down to this idea too. I think I remember, and I've heard other people say this, but I know Ron Finley talked about this in his TED talk many years ago I watched, was that, kids who grow tomatoes eat tomatoes. You know what I mean? I was one of those picky kids, picky eaters growing up. You know what I mean? But had I been one of these kids who are growing this stuff, had this relationship to the garden, this growing process that many, hopefully, many kids are lucky enough through their, parents and grandparents and stuff to be able to have that connection. They eat more nutritionally. They eat more healthy because they're connected with that stuff at a young age.
I've watched adults change. I've watched adults
myself,
who are like, who I don't eat this, I don't eat that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh well, man, that looks way more tasty to me than I ever thought it would. And it's because you're more connected to the nature of it all than you ever had been.
Yeah, there were a lot of things I resisted from when I was a kid that when I started learning about growing my own food and my food gardening space was like, well, I don't really like this, from my past memory, but I'm going to try growing it, and then and then in that growing process, of course you got to try it out.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work for everything.
No,
it
doesn't.
Really doesn't work for. There are some things that I still kind of like hold back on and all of that, especially one of them, which I'm learning a little bit more about, more recipes and things, but eggplants. I love and I'm fascinated with growing eggplants. I think the plants are amazing, awesome.
Same. I've grown so many, but I've given them all away. It's
just
not
the eating and just, I don't know.
No, eggplant's not my favorite either. And I've tried it a lot of different ways. I've tried several different varieties. I will eat it, but it is not one that I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? I prefer squash.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it always makes me think back to like my own grandmother. We grew up in we had a real big commercial fishing family, right? And we grew up on one of these in Alaska, one of these just world famous rivers for salmon fishing and all of that. But I'm not a fish person. I never have been since I was young, and I just couldn't do it. But my grandmother was constantly, you haven't tried it this way. And then she would try you make it a different way. Or she was like, well, no, you haven't tried it this way. So I was always kind of like having to get and try new things when it came down to it. It never did change my mind ultimately, but it is good to kind of get in and try different things. And I've done that with eggplants. It doesn't really seem to stick, but a lot of other things. Peas. I hated peas growing up. Just couldn't stand them. There's something about it. And then, man, I love peas today. I think they're one of the greatest things. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all these sort of things I never really would have touched when I'm younger because I'm growing them. And that's, again, too, as an adult. But imagine what that does for children from a young age, though, too. It's just
it makes a huge difference. I've already seen a difference in my son in just how he wants to engage with nature compared to some of his peers who I'm like, oh, I don't think you're outside very much. It definitely matters when we're engaging, especially if we want. I think more parents would benefit to have like some small garden that their kid could just like, even if it was just a tray of soil that that their kid was watching something grow in.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, though, too, again, with that sort of history and background, I wasn't, I've always done house plants. So my daughter grew up with a lot of house plants and all of that. It wasn't later until she, became an adult that I found food gardening and all of that, or close to an adult anyways, that found food gardening. And, so I've slowly been kind of working that into her life now too. And so, she's working on and, talking about the pothos, she's got one of them at her house that she's nurturing and growing, a piece of the plant and those sort of things working on. And now I just had my first grandchild. So I have the new,
congratulations.
so I'm really working this, into my daughter now. So hopefully within the next couple of seasons, I've got her food gardening too, and starting to make those connections so that we together can really start early with my granddaughter.
Awesome.
Yeah, just good stuff. And again, just really awesome to do. Real quick, I did want to mention too, kind of getting back to the idea of that the new book you've got in connection with trees and everything. I've been seeing some of these reels and things that you've been putting out on social media and everything, because you recently just took a trip to Yosemite and Sequoia National Parks and all of that. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what it was like to get out there with, Sequoia. We were talking about some of the most giant trees you've ever seen in your life. Just
man,
amazing,
stunning. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just amazing nature. You get a chance to get out there and hike in some of these forests. It's just unbelievable.
Unbelievable is correct. I will give a warning to anyone who is going. Make sure you're prepared for mountain driving, because to get to this beauty, you have to drive quite a bit of a ways to get to the park. And then once you're in the park, you have to drive another like 45 minutes to an hour in the park through the mountains to get to the areas. I say that because when I was doing my research and I was planning out the things, I made notes about the distances, but not so much that it was in the mountains. So this is just a small note to throw out to whoever it is who's going to plan to do this next. It is so worth it. The sights that you will see are unbelievable. I've spent a lot of time with my feet on the ground. I feel like I have a lot of respect for life, and to see an entity of life that's several thousand years old and still thriving is a fascinating thing. It felt like I was in a mystical space of sorts. So I enjoyed every second of it. But as I was saying earlier to you, it did have me in a state of reflection and confusion that any of our ancestors anywhere would cut such a thing down and turn it into a bar stool or a bed frame. Like the audacity and the wildness to such a thought. So it's made me think about how powerful human ignorance can be, and how important human respect for nature needs to be.
Even
So
more so now as we continue to, like we said, we like we touched on with this idea that, future things are only growing, things are only going to be more, and we have to be more understanding of what our footprint is when it comes
mhm.
to a lot of this sort of stuff. I mean, we can't live in a world like, I don't know if anybody's ever watched the, really, Star Wars. Their main planet is this planet of all city. It's
Right.
just one big city. This whole planet, I think, is the Coruscant, if I can get it correctly.
Mhm.
But thinking of that as if we're growing in this continuous growth of what we're doing as humans on this planet, I mean, I would hate to imagine that we allow ourselves to go in that sort of direction,
I mean,
because
you
of the
telling me.
loss of what we would lose in that aspect. And you can't find a better place to connect with this stuff than some of those forests you can find here in the Pacific Northwest,
Mhm.
uh, in California, Yosemite, Sequoia, and experiencing these giant trees. I don't know if you got to see like the giants,
Yeah,
but
I
many
did. I got to see several of them, and so then
President, Sherman,
yeah,
General Sherman.
exactly, the
Yeah,
Sherman. What I thought was wild though was that I found out in this trip that there
yeah,
was the equivalent on the East Coast were chestnut trees,
yeah,
and they weren't the same size, but they were like in between
yeah,
that size, and we cut literally every one of them down on the East Coast for
yeah,
houses. And
yeah,
so like when you just think about how long it takes for a tree like that to grow,
yeah,
um, and
yeah.
what it does for its environment and for its ecosystem, it definitely has put me in a place where I'm like, oh man, I got to challenge every human being to be better, right? We have
Yeah,
to challenge ourselves to do better.
yeah. I don't
That's
know if
not
you've ever been to Washington, D.C., but we had on our book club this last month or month before, but we had Marta McDowell on to talk about her book, All the President's Gardens. And in this
mm,
book, there's this picture from that was a painting from really early on as they were trying to as our country was trying to find where its capital is going to be, right?
mhm,
So there's this painting of the where Washington D.C. ends up, and it's just this
mm,
full nature, trees, the
massive trees.
river, all that sort of stuff, and it's just a couple of people on horseback, kind of overlooking this whole space. That now, if we look from at that painting and then look at what it is today in
Mm,
this just big, massive conglomerate of a city and everything, what we did to that space. I mean, growth is growth. It's almost just bound to happen, but there's also a kind of responsibility we have
right.
as people to be caring for and ensuring that we're not leaving such a devastating footprint.
Yeah, and I think that in that same line of thinking, we've got to do better about learning to grow with. Because
Hmm.
like the idea that our growth must come at the cost of the environment and all
Yeah,
the things that we're already living there can't continue. It
yeah,
really shouldn't continue. It's not only is it utterly egotistical, but it is also a really um
yeah.
dark way to train our children to
Hmm.
continue to perpetuate interactions with living things.
Yeah, and I just hope that it's something we as people can really find, that sense of ourselves and what we're, you know, building into our future so that we can make sure that, again, we've got these national parks. They need to be saved in far larger ways than what we
Absolutely.
do. We need to
Absolutely.
expand spaces. We need to find newer spaces that we can just, you know, you can't do anything here. This is for nature. We have to make sure that we're thinking about that stuff, as well as, one of the things I talk about a lot for my channel and what I do is we're talking about urban gardening. We're in the city already. So if we are in these spaces that are already created and they're just basically nature deserts in a sense of cityscapes, what we need to do is find ways how we can do and manage and bring those into, or bring nature back into those spaces, bring gardens and gardening filtering into those spaces so
Right.
that we can make sure that people who are cut off from some of them can find them more easily accessible.
Agreed.
Yeah. Just a lot of things to think about, man. Lots and lots of things to think about when it comes down to it. And again,
Absolutely.
too, I'm really glad that there's people like yourself who is out there again, too, as we've talked about today, talking about your journey to where we become this garden Marcus and written these great books and to help us understand our human connection to nature and stuff, and with more and more folks like yourself putting out this sort of information, I hope that we're able to kind of overcome some of those tendencies that we have
Me
as
too.
human beings.
Me too. As we wrap this up, one of the last things I'll say, if I may, my
Absolutely.
last spiel. I write about this in the book a bit. I think that there's a battle going on, and that battle is between life and the world. And I think that life is the brown, the green stuff, like the cosmic organic existence that we all share. And the world is civilization, the institutions, the things we created originally to make life better.
Yeah.
The world has stopped caring about life. And that's presented a really chaotic problem because most of us now, despite being a part of life, we're working for the world. And so that has now put life at odds with the world, and it's made a lot of people sacrifice their worth for the pursuit of a value. And so now you have a ton of people who feel worthless. And I say all of that to set up for this.
Yeah.
Every choice we make is a seed planted in the forest of our future. We're living in a type of forest right now. If we want to live in a forest with more love, we've got to plant more seeds of kindness, patience, and positivity today so we can have more wholesome roots that turn into trees of prosperity that yields fruits of success that we can all enjoy. If we don't make that choice today to plant those seeds of love, kindness, patience, positivity, we will continue to perpetuate the forest of negativity many of us know.
Yeah. It's again too very profound. That is so profound. And again, really, really comes down to this, battle we're having in human nature with humans and nature. And we got to find those connections and people, really too, we want that connection. We want for it. It's just some of us are not in a position to find it.
Absolutely.
And we got to do more in that, helping people find that, in themselves, for themselves, and to be able to participate with, the rest of us so that we can maintain some of these beautiful spaces and places that we have in our world.
And I think truly we can do that if we put kindness, patience, and positivity at the forefront of our interactions with ourselves and each other.
Yeah. Just really great stuff, Marcus, man. Just thanks again for spending the time with us today and talking about this. I know there's a ton more we could just dig into when it comes to these sort of things, and hopefully we'll get you back here in the future and we'll just dig in and dig in on more of it, because just really great conversation. These are the types of conversations that we really, really want to be having when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And it's just we're really fortunate to have you here with us today. And again, for everybody else who's watching, I hope you've all enjoyed this conversation. And if you can, definitely get down to those links below. Like I said, to Marcus's, I got his YouTube channel down below where you can connect with his videos and his reels and those different things that he puts out there, as well as a link to his website. And you can find all of his books and everything there as well too. So definitely go and do that. And Marcus, thanks you again so much for taking your time today to be here with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, excellent. We'll see you in a minute. All right. Again, everybody, I told you we were in for a treat today. I've been wanting to talk to Marcus for a while about all this sort of stuff. I love following what he does and all the things that he talks about, because again, there's just so many beneficial aspects to gardening that we just don't even really think about, when it comes down to it. We love to, again, to have those types of conversations right here on the Let's Get Growing show. So again, I appreciate all of you for spending your time here today to talk with us and to participate in our chat and all of that as well too. So again, thank you so much for being here with us today. And again, like I mentioned too earlier in the show, we had a really great conversation last week with Mark Valencia over at Self-Sufficient Me, and our good friend Nate Murray over at Garden Like a Viking for our last week's Sunday edition gardening roundtable. And I know that Serena was asking a little bit earlier too about Gardner Scott being on the show. He's usually on with us the second Sunday of each month to answer all of your gardening questions. But the last couple of months, it's kind of ran into a problem with his schedule and all that sort of stuff. So we haven't had him here for the last couple of months, and that'll also be the case for tomorrow as well too for our show. So we will have him back. I've talked with him. We're going to have him back again regularly again for the second Sunday of every month on our channel here, and that'll be starting next month as well too, to have him on. So we're looking forward to having him back. But again too, we are here, like I say, every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, and that means we'll be back here tomorrow for our Sunday edition of the show. And for the Sunday edition of the show, we are going to be we'll be bringing back former guests to the show, Josh over at the Plant Techie, and Des with Gardening with Des. We'll have a fun gardening conversation in our gardening roundtable with them. And again, too, hopefully next week, I'm still kind of working on as well. We are planning to have Ryan Schumacher from Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. I don't know if you've all seen Baker Creek's reels and everything that they put out. Ryan is huge and does all sorts of fun things with them and everything too. So we're going to have a fun conversation with him. I said, I get to see him every year at the National Heirloom Exposition. So I thought it'd be fun to have him on. And we are also supposed to next week have our Sunday edition monthly gardening book club with Mitch McCulloch, the Seed Hunter, and talk all about his great book, The Seed Hunter. So we'll see about that. Still not too sure if that's actually going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, we will have our good friend Mark Roche Colbert with us as a co-host. And what we'll do if Mitch isn't able to make it, what we'll do is we'll just do kind of a review of all of these great books that we've already gotten to have this year, and talk all about those. We had Ashley Thomas on for How to Become a Gardener. I mentioned just a little bit earlier, Marna McDowell's All the President's Gardens, Karen Hughes' Leave Your Troubles Behind, Cisco Morris's Ooh La La, Christy Wilhelmie's Garden Variety, and Ellen Zacco's Forage for Wild Foods. And again, so really great books. So again, we'll either have one of those two things going on. We'll definitely be here for the Sunday edition of the show. And again, too, thank you all so much for being here with me for this show here this Saturday. And I look forward to seeing all of you for our show tomorrow, Sunday edition. And we'll see all of you again, 11 a.m. tomorrow, Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see you then.